have not done a YouTube live video in a minute, really at all before. But this is mostly to just help me think through the idea that I'm working on, which I've been reading this book, Cosmos and Transcendence by Wolfgang Smith. It's very hard to understand some of it, but I found it interesting in relation to documentary work, which I have done in the past. I've worked on a few documentaries, and let's see, actually, I'm going to keep that where it is. This is some interesting stuff. I got some notes here. This is not going to be a super long video. I got these notes, and I've also got stuff I've highlighted from the book. So I'll just get right to it. Theory of media is kind of what I called this. And what spurred this idea was reading Cosmos and Transcendence, as I said earlier, particularly pages 10 through 11. And so I'm going to read some underlined sections that I have here. It says, "For indeed, that theory compels us to admit that our scientific knowledge is incurably phenomenal. It is a knowledge, in other words, not of things in themselves, but of things in relation to an observer. As Heisenberg has expressed it, if one can speak of a worldview of the exact sciences in our time, this actually refers no longer to a view of nature, but to a view of our relationship to nature. It is knowledge, in other words, not of things in themselves, but of things in relation to an observer." And then later on he talks about, and he's talking about studying particles and whatnot. Particle physics, I guess you could call it. This is there's a lot of words in here that I have to look up as I'm going along, but it's interesting. And I'm really looking forward to getting through the rest of this book, because so far it's been really fascinating. There is an operator, for instance, representing the position coordinate q of a particle, and another operator representing the corresponding momentum coordinate p. But there is no operator representing the unobservable pair qp. There is no operator representing the unobservable pair. And then this is some of the other stuff that really stood out to me. Okay. He's talking about, well, yeah, we don't need to get into that. Yeah, I'll just read this section. It says, "The wave function is thus a catalog, a quote-unquote catalog of information, which does not tell us all that we might wish to know about a given physical system. The point is, however, that it tells us all that we can know. This becomes somewhat plausible if one considers that," and this is the part I underlined, because this is stuff I've thought of, and it clicked in my mind just recently. "Every measurement involves a physical interaction between two systems, the system to be measured and a second system through which the measurement is to be accomplished. Every measurement involves a physical interaction between two systems, the system to be measured and a second system through which the measurement is to be accomplished." The measurement itself disturbs the first system to some degree. And when I thought of this, I thought about filming documentaries or media in general. And I made some notes about that. When filming a subject or subjects, you invariably change the way they interact or act. The presence of a camera, let alone a cameraman, alters the true reality you are trying to capture. I dare say even the thought of being filmed will make the subject act different people can sense when they are being watched. Like if you're doing something and you can, out of like the corner of your eye or the back of your mind, you're like, oh shoot, someone's watching me. You know, you get this like intuition and you turn a light like, oh shoot. And people can sense electrical frequencies. I think that. Like, for instance, this room I'm in, it's got solar batteries batteries that are charged by solar panels. And it makes this high pitched buzzing noise. And that's only the stuff that my ears can pick up, let alone all the other senses. So if we're taking in from sense data all of these fields from electronic devices, it changes how we interact because we're aware that I think sort of like a spidey sense or something, if you want to go that way. We're aware that there's something there, and it changes how we act. Maybe even the people can sense the electrical frequencies emitted by the camera. This changes how people act, and I'm saying that like it's a truth, but who knows exactly. Thank you, Maria. What time is it? 8:27. I'm on the Pacific time. You can kind of see the sunset. It's beautiful out there. But let's see. This changes how people act. Some are more shy, others showboat or ham it up. And a side note that I thought of is, what are the effects of mass surveillance on society and on how people act? How does it change normal human actions and interactions? And as soon as the camera is introduced, the truth of a moment is contaminated, like a scientific experiment. Shout out to Houston. I used to live in Texas. That's where I grew up, in near the Dallas-Fort Worth area, a little town. So it's probably hot there too. And so I said, as soon as a camera is introduced, the truth of a moment is contaminated. Is all documentary work propaganda? Question mark. Is propaganda bad? And those are some things I'm just thinking through. The whole reason I did this stream is to kind of help me sort through these ideas. I'm still working on reading Propaganda by Edward Bernays, who was, I think he was like related to Sigmund Freud. And anyway, I don't want to start talking about stuff I haven't actually fully thought through, but I worked on a documentary. We love you, Tekka. Shout out to Tekka. Shout out to Belly Roll Edits. I don't know what that is, but shout out. But so I worked on a documentary about logging when I was a teenager. And then the day that I was going to take it, I edited it on this older computer. And the day that I was going to take it to, what do you call it, a conference to sell, my computer crashed. And then years later, I worked on a documentary for 6 years. And it was more focused on like a group, like a social group that I was involved with at the time. And I always ran into that where I would be filming something, and as soon as people knew that the camera was rolling, it would change how they acted. And it was this problem that I couldn't get around. And so I'm thinking, if you're trying to portray truth in media, like what's the real truth or the, unaltered, unadulterated truth of something, it's very, very hard to do. And because as soon as you introduce a camera, you're changing the way people act. And nowadays, like you go to a concert and everybody's got their phone out, and people they either ham it up and they act crazy like, woo, or they go the opposite route and they don't want to be caught out looking weird or something like that, and they don't want to be viral in a bad way, you know what I mean? Well, I guess any attention is good attention, is what they say, but that's neither here nor there. Yeah, so that's something I was thinking about, and I don't know if there's really a way to get around that, because you don't want to be, sneaking around filming people. It's illegal in a lot of places, and so it's a tricky one. And it's related to how do people view reality. And inevitably, I think you end up, when you're making something, you end up putting out your own view of the world in it. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's just something to be aware of. And like for instance, I think with like the news, we're talking about legacy media and that sort of thing. They've really leaned into the we're going to just push our view. So there's not even a desire to do something objective. You know, there's always a slant, even on the way that headlines are written. And so it's just something to be aware of, something to consider. Um, and as far as like doing entertainment, the, the real world is not necessarily more interesting. So when people are hamming it up in a video, that's, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, but it's just something to be aware of, because anytime you're viewing media, you're not viewing reality, quote unquote. You know, you're viewing a version of it that's altered, because all people will act different. And I don't know where I was going with this, because I'm still working through these ideas. I'm working on coming up with some sort of a theory of like how to make movies or documentaries in a healthy way that's not manipulating people, hopefully. But propaganda, I think, is inevitable to some extent, because whoever's making it is going to introduce their own view on things. And so that's why I think it's the responsible move to think through your worldview, you know, and be aware that you have one. And don't necessarily just go with this is the hard part, is don't just go with whatever the trend is of what everyone's thinking, you know, or what you feel like you're supposed to think. And I don't know where I was going with that. Hope you all have a good evening. I haven't done a live video in a long time, but maybe I'll do some more. And I hope you all have a good evening. That's pretty much all I got. All right.